building the skilled workforce for a green economy. And Gujarat, with its entrepreneurial spirit and the leadership in renewable energy deployment, is I can say the apt platform. It can provide the apt platform where we can start this dialogue, for initiation of this dialogue. Now, the state, as you're all aware, leads in wind and solar, and we're also picking up fast on the emerging technologies, which is the battery energy storage technology, also the EVs and the green hydrogen sector. And all these developments, which are taking place in the state, have made us realize the importance and the urgency for a very different type of a workforce, a skilled workforce which should be made ready for the future industries. Now, for this, we need a collaboration between the academia, the industry, the government, the financial institutions, as well as the public, we can say, or the civil society. Now, this all requires rethinking our training systems, aligning our skilling development towards the future requirements, the requirements of the future industries, ensuring inclusivity, as well as mobilizing funds to scale up this operation. So all these together have to join hands and build up a workforce wherein the state can develop the skill. No, I'm not talking only about the state, even the country. So today's panel discussion brings together thought leaders, professionals, and experts who are going to discuss and deliberate on how India and I can say the state in general can position itself to become the talent hub for the green economy. I welcome all the panelists, the esteemed panelists and the moderator to kindly take the place on the dais, after which, so can you please welcome Mr. Dr. Sunil Shukla, Director General of Entrepreneurship Development Institute of India, Mr. Jan Sinclair, Australia's Vice Consul in Western India, Mr. Srinivas Krishnaswamy, Chief Executive Officer of Vasudha Foundation, Dr. Devdeep Dey, Head of Research at National Skill Development Council, Mr. Abhishek Padmanabhan, the Director, Center of Excellence in Energy Sciences and E-Mobility at Triya University, Mr. Rana Pujari, who is the lead for RE in NRDC, and Ms. Gunjan, the moderator for the day, the program lead at CEEW, Council on Energy, Environment and Water. To welcome all the dignitaries on this stage, can I please request my officers one by one, the officers of GATRI, Green Energy Transition Research Institute, to welcome all the officers one by one. Can I please request Mr. Kher to kindly welcome Dr. Sunil Shukla. Mr. Sachiketan Soni, could you please welcome Mr. Jan Sinclair. Ms. Prima Tanna Rana, could you please welcome Mr. Srinivas Krishnaswamy. Mr. Ashish Tiwari, could you please welcome Dr. Devdeep Dey. Mr. Bhuvan Thakur, could you please welcome Mr. Abhishek Padmanabhan. Mr. Jaimin, could you please welcome Mr. Rana Pujari. And finally, Mr. Amit Patel, could you please welcome the star moderator of the day, Ms. Gunjan. Thank you, officers, and Gunjan, the stage is yours.
Are we audible? This is working, right? Can't hear. It's on, so maybe we'll just, we'll all have to speak a bit louder so that the mic catches. Very good morning. Thank you for having us and for all the effort that goes behind putting together a large panel of 6 panelists. Um, I'll just start off by setting the context a little bit on the intersection of skills and entrepreneurship in the context of India's green development pathway. Of course, as we would know, skills forms the backbone of growth and entrepreneurship in India, where the world's largest youth population at 350 million young people between the age of 19 to 29. That's a lot of demographic dividend that's waiting to be reaped constructively. And how we do it is going to be critical to how fast and in which direction India grows. These opportunities are, like Alka had briefly pointed out, in green energy, where we're looking at battery and other solutions, but they are also in the circular economy, they're also in bioeconomy, when we're talking about biomass to power, when we're looking at recycling of solar panels. So green economy for India, because we are large, we are agrarian, we have a manufacturing base and ecosystem, it's a lot of green energy solutions, but also it's important that we recognize that we have the ability to be leaders in circular economy and the bioeconomy as well. So in today's panel, we are going to hear about how India is making skill development and entrepreneurship twin engines of growth. And joining us for the discussion, I'll just take a moment to introduce the achievements and who the panelists are. So Dr. Sunil Shukla, Director General of EDII. He's a pioneer in entrepreneurship education, has developed programs for startups, MSMEs, and corporate leaders. He also edits the Journal of Entrepreneurship and drives global studies in entrepreneurial trends. Devdeep Dey, Head of Research and at the National Skill Development Corporation. Devdeep brings 2 decades of experience in research, consulting, and policy. He specializes in skill development, MSMEs, and financial inclusion. And at the NSDC, he leads initiatives to strengthen India's skill ecosystem. Jan Sinclair. Jan is Vice Consul for Australia in Western India. His role involves boosting trade and investment between Australia and India, as well as reporting political and economic developments. He has taken a lead role in developing Australia's sports diplomacy agenda with India and is the principal lead for the state of Gujarat. Srinivas Krishnaswamy, he's the founder and CEO of Vasudha Foundation. Srinivas has over 3 decades of experience across corporate and the NGO sector. He leads pioneering initiatives in clean energy, climate action, and industrial decarbonization at national and subnational levels. And Abhishek Padmanabhan, sitting to my left, Director, Center of Excellence in Energy Sciences and E-Mobility, HI University, Bangalore. Abhishek's a specialist in decentralized energy and future-ready technologies. He's working towards guiding innovation at the intersection of research, education, and entrepreneurship. And lastly, we have Rana Pujari, Renewable Energy Lead at the NRDC. Rana leads the renewable energy work at NRDC, collaborating with governments and partners to scale clean energy action. With experience across policy, consulting, grant making, he drives impactful climate solutions. So welcome, panelists. We are doing quite well on time, which is not something we often hear on panels. Panels are often rushed and we have to keep wrapping up, but that's not the case for us. So we are looking forward to having a good 50-minute conversation that leaves 50, 60 minutes, so that leaves almost 10 minutes of intervention each. Do make the most of it. Towards the end, I'd also like to offer a little bit of a twist to the format. We'll, of course, have questions from our earnest listeners and audience, but also use this opportunity because we don't get to meet as often either. So why not use this as a platform to ask a one short, quick question with a one-line response to each other, if we think that there's something that we want to talk about. So that's the small twist. So let me start with Dr. Sunil Shukla. Dr. Shukla, if you could, I think you have a mic in front of you. Yes. So what are some of the efforts?
Hello, hello.
हाँ चल रहा है.
चल रहा है.
So what are some of the efforts you are undertaking for entrepreneurship development for new green business opportunities?
Thank you. Thank you, Gunjan ji. Thank you, Alka ji, for giving this opportunity to me. I come from Entrepreneurship Development Institute of India, which is in Gandhinagar, about 1.5 hours travel from here. This institute was established at a time when hardly people thought that entrepreneurship can also be someday a matter of training. Because the popular belief at that time in '83 was that those who are born in a particular community or certain families, they only can become entrepreneurs. But it was Gujarat that took lead and established an institute which broke the myth that entrepreneurship is by birth. And since then, through various interventions, we are working in entrepreneurship within and outside the country: education, training, research, policy support, scheme implementation, institutionalization, and all that. And you would agree that during last couple of years, about 10, 11 years to be more precise, entrepreneurship has gained lots of importance. It's no longer a novice word. We don't have to introduce whether entrepreneurs can be promoted or not. Today, if anybody is asking, they ask a question that how it can be done, or what are various offshoots of entrepreneurship schemes, etc., etc. Much credit goes to our Honorable Prime Minister, who introduced several schemes. It is not just Startup India, which many of us are familiar with, which was unveiled in 2016, and which has contributed to lots of startups emerging in the country. As compared to about 350 startups that we had in 2014, today India is a home to about 180,000 startups. And the incubation centers in the exceeded 2,000. Startups, they have also gained reputation as unicorns. About 120 of them have become unicorns. So we know all those things are there. The good thing is that it is not only that entrepreneurship is gaining ground in the tier 1 cities, metros, but also it has expanded to tier 2, tier 3 cities, rural enterprises. Schemes like Startup Village Entrepreneurship Program of Ministry of Rural Development, or funding support like PMEGP, Mudra, several other interventions are there. My institute has been working with the various government departments, central government and also the state government, and to help them implementing the developmental programs. Basically creating micro enterprises, strengthening entrepreneurship, empowering the deprived community, marginalized one, startup interventions. We have 2 incubation centers supported by DSP and Niti Aayog at the campus. Lots of interventions. And through all our interventions, whether it is government supported or CSR supported, our focus has been creating sustainable enterprises. That you create an enterprise which is sustainable. Sustainability is an essential part of entrepreneurship. And when it comes to green business, the logo of TI that this thought was the promote enterprises which have zero effect on the climate and environment. So this is something that we have inherited, And this is what we try to impart through our interventions programs, that while creating economic value, how can you protect, preserve, or at least do least damage to the environment. This has we have been doing through various programs, whether the kind of enterprises you select, the idea stage itself, which is either in the food processing sector, handloom, handicrafts, renewable energy, mobility, waste management. Circular economy is a core program that we offer both in national and international programs. So all these opportunities that we teach them, we try to promote green entrepreneurship without at times saying so. It is there, it is already ingrained that the kind of enterprises you promote, it should have least damage to the environment and net zero. So this is what we have been doing. Either it is part of the business enterprise or the social enterprise that we promote. We also know that at times it is difficult to convince people. The kind of awareness which we have seen in metro and tier 1 cities, such awareness still it has to reach to the smaller towns, rural areas, where the focus is more on the livelihood enterprises. But we continue to make efforts, we continue to help people, we continue to help them mobilizing funding support also. And thanks to Mudra kind of funding, I think there are sufficient opportunities, and we are working with the diverse groups with a message: sustainable enterprises, least damage. And there are interventions also, like we work with the MSME ministry. There is one intervention, JET, zero effect, zero defect. So how can you create enterprise which has zero defect on the environment? And there are schemes for funding is there, just 10% they have, promoters have to bring their equity and contribution, and they can get supported. So this kind of business opportunities we are promoting. MSME ministry incidentally has introduced another World Bank supported program, that is raising and accelerating MSME performance. And there also promotion and investment in the circular economy. And such interventions, such schemes we have been trying to promote. I would like to stop here and maybe wait for another opportunity to say something. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Shukla. It's very interesting to know that there seems to be a difference. First, congratulations for taking entrepreneurship away from the mindset that it can only be inherited. You can also be a first-time entrepreneur in India and do very well. And for your point that tier 1 and 2 cities there is some difference in how entrepreneurship is thought of, and the need for it is felt in 2 and 3. So if I could come to you, Devdeep, as head of research at NSDC, how are the skill development requirements? How are you at NSDC thinking of the skill development requirements of a tier 2 and 3 city like Mehsana to be different, and what are some of the initiatives?
Thanks, Kunjan. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Alkaji, for having me here. It's a very interesting discussion, and let me, start the discussion saying that when we are talking about green transition towards building a green economy, towards building a skilled workforce who will be trained to deliver the green jobs, the green manufacturing as a whole. What we need to understand that, in a country like India, typically in the urban cities, the metro cities, we have understood that yes, there is a net zero target to be achieved. There are NDC goals of which we design and all those stuff. But when we really, if we leave aside those metros, those urban areas, and if we really want to get into the understanding that yes, in the tier 2, tier 3 cities, how really we, build that green skilling, workforce. What we need to understand is that what is the aspiration of the youth? So we start with, because see, at the end of the day, when we are talking about the jobs which are there, the employment opportunities which are there, we also need to understand that what is the aspiration of the youth. So for example, when we look at and there are different models actually in the literature which says that, that what are the mobility preferences of the workers. So when we look at the mobility preferences of the workers, many times we have seen that, people who are located in tier 2, tier 3 cities, not necessarily they would like to migrate to tier 1 cities or elsewhere. Many times they want to remain in that particular place. So and when we say that, if, for example, the youth of today, if they want to remain in places like Mehsana, so we need to understand that what are the youth preferences first. And when we look at the youth preferences, youth aspirations, typically we have seen that for a Delhi traveler, for example, I'm working in this vicinity, and I'm an agripreneur, for example. I'm an agricultural worker, for example. So now, my work relates that yes, in the morning I start and then in the evening I come back, or because my workplace is so close by that I can come even during the lunchtime and go back to work again. The second case can be that, where, I go for now this place of work should be between, 5 to 6 kilometers radius. Now, when we look at that, yes, if you really want to push it further, then you can actually start in the morning and then come by the evening. So that place of work may be within 50 kilometer, within 55 to 60 kilometer, not beyond that, right? So now, what I'm trying to say is that once my place of work changes as per this radius, now the moment it goes beyond 60 kilometers, it becomes a weekend kind of thing. That if you are beyond 50 kilometers and within 200 kilometers, there can be a case that when you can come back, during the weekends to your place. Because see, we need to understand that youth, they have the aspiration, but then in India, the kind of cultural setup we have, we all want to live with our family, with our children, with everyone around. So that context has to be kept in mind. And so when I'm saying this, so what happens is the mobility preferences, they change, and accordingly the gestures, the type of employment changes. So the moment I look at a job which is beyond 200 kilometers, so then, it can be anywhere. I mean, it can be in Delhi, it can be anywhere in the world. I don't care. So what I'm trying to say is that when you are trying to say that the mobility preferences of the people, and that is what is very important, that when we run any kind of skilling program, we always take into cognizance that what is the youth aspiration. And accordingly, when it comes to, for example, places like Mehsana, we need to take into cognizance that what are the competence for this particular place. For example, when we talk about Mehsana, I mean, I was looking at some of the profiles that the place does really well, for example, in spices, right? And it's a net exporter of spices. For example, there are a lot of metal-based industries which are in and around. There are a lot of micro enterprises around for metal-based industries. Then we have, for example, for woodwork. A lot of woodwork, furniture-driven work they are happening here. So now, if we see, now I'm trying to connect this, that yes, if these are the different opportunities which are here, and what is the aspiration which the youth is having. Accordingly, the training programs can be designed. And in this regard, the Government of India schemes, for example, there is a Prime Minister Vishwakarma scheme, which is, many of you may be aware of, which is really a demand-driven entrepreneurship initiative. And it typically talks about that, there is, it is not really a long-term course or long-term training program. It is really, it is just to boost the entrepreneurial mindset. So those people who are getting registered in this PM Vishwakarma scheme, they are actually entrepreneurs. They are already entrepreneurs in the sense that they are doing those jobs. For example, metal-based work, the work of a blacksmith essentially. So many times they do this by generations after generations. So they have inherited that work from their father, from their grandparents, right? So what has happened is that they apply for this scheme just to get a recognition, because in our kind of a system, this kind of hereditary skills, they are not recognized. And for recognition of this, we have a provision within this where there is a very short 5 to 7 days kind of a training program. We call it RPM, Recognition of Prior Learning. So what happens is that through this recognition of prior learning, we recognize them and we certify them that yes, you are eligible for this. And then what happens is that once you get recognized, you are eligible to get loans also to take forward your work. And this is an initiative by the Department of MSME. But then we do the skilling part of it as a Minister of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. Actually, we are NSDC is entrusted with the skilling aspect of it, and then loan is being disbursed from the Minister of Finance to take it forward. And there is a mechanism to monitor it, that whether you are actually utilizing it appropriately or you are not utilizing it. There's a checks and balances here. So what I'm trying to say is that for these tier 2, tier 3 cities, it is very important to understand that what are the opportunities around and how, for example, I mean, and when we talk about this entire industrial development.
The last example.
Just last example, I'll just conclude. For example, when you are talking about, for example, the National Green Hydrogen Mission. Now, what we need to understand is that transition towards green, it can't really be ignored, right? So this has to happen. And there is a huge mandate that yes, towards this green manufacturing, towards preparing the workforce for the green hydrogen mission, there is what kind of courses can be introduced, how they can be embedded. And typically, as we are sitting in this university, one important point which I would like to highlight is that today the National Educational Policy, the NEP 2020, it actually gives the provision to embed the long-term training courses within part of the curriculum, the curriculum of the universities I'm talking about, so that we can really prepare the workforce future ready. And that is something which I think from a green skilling perspective we should look into.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So since you already spoke about embedding curriculum in university discipline, let me actually break the pre-decided flow and come to you, Abhishek. Given your role at Atria University, what are some of the fresh ways in which Atria is bridging the industry-academia gap for skill development and entrepreneurship? And I ask this question because if you speak to anyone from the industry world, they are going to say, "Kya kar rahe hain academia? We don't know. वो अपना paper लिखते हैं. They do what they do in their own bubble." And academia often struggles to understand the language that industry will understand. Industry ka, what is the business case for my research? Academia struggles to catch up with. So what are some of the fresh ways in which you at Atria are bridging the industry-academia gap?
Hey, good morning to everyone here. I hope I'm audible. Yes. Yeah. So I don't know how many of you have seen my profile, but it's not a very classic academic profile. So I have personally spent around 15 years in the US, in Canada, in India, not in academia, right? I dropped out of my PhD and to shift to a role here, and right now I'm in the enviable position of having to guide a few PhD students within the university, right? So life comes full circle on that. Here the big thing that we are trying to say, so the university itself, Atria University, was set up only in 2021 to focus exclusively on sustainability. So one of the things we have done is that we have avoided falling into the traditional electrical engineering, mechanical engineering type domains. Instead, we have interdisciplinary majors. So we have only 4 focus areas in the university. There's energy, there's e-mobility, there's life sciences, which primarily focuses on biotech and agri-tech, 2 verticals, and there's AI, but AI is also applied AI for sustainability. So it's a very narrow focus on what we do by design, right? Because you can't do 100 things well. You can do maybe 3 things or 4 things very well. The second thing is that we don't typically have, we have centers of excellence instead of traditional departments, but the COEs are staffed not by people who have the exact same specialization, but for example, I have a software lead who comes from an economics background and a product management background in software We have an engineering lead who comes from a completely different background. I personally also have a data background. So the idea is to weave together ecosystems which complement each other and not do this. The pedagogy wise, I think NEP, the point he brought out that NEP does offer you a lot of flexibility is it's something we have leveraged because we are an NEP native institution. We started after NEP was passed. So there's a lot of project-based learning which happens. In fact, and this is something where I think the skilling piece becomes useful, right? In Bangalore, so where we're based, we have 5 to 6 gigafactories which will be opening up in the next 2 years or 3 years for manufacturing lithium-ion batteries. Each of these gigafactories requires people who understand the process of making lithium-ion cells, which is a very scarce thing in India. I don't think people understand how scarce it is. We're actually getting people from the US at massive salaries to come back here and actually staff these facilities, and even then there's a shortage, which is, by the way, delaying a lot of the plant openings quite significantly. In our case, we've retooled the curriculum to actually, or rather not retooled, we actually made the curriculum that way, where our students actually spend a quarter focusing on batteries, and their final project, which is in lieu of a final exam, is actually to make a lithium-ion coin cell in the campus. So in the process of doing that, they are actively knowing how to make a cathode, an anode, electrolyte, pack it, test it, do all of this, all of which is directly at scale implementable in a gigafactory also. Right, so I think it does require some level of reimagining of what the curriculum needs. You need to be aware of the market trends which are happening. So for example, if green hydrogen is becoming a thing in 2030 and it will be commercial in 2030, you need training on it right now. The second is that I think, and this is where academia typically in India struggles to do that, right? Because there is some level of disconnect from the industry. There's an unwillingness to engage with industry and participate even in forums like this, right? Where you don't want to live in your own little bubble. The second is that we completely removed KPIs like papers. We don't look at them, right? So our only focus is impact. So I think that pushes things automatically in a direction of looking to the industry to see what they actually need and how we can satisfy those solutions. The third thing is, because we have all been operators in the past in some way or the other, just to give you an example from the solar ecosystem, right? You need training not in one particular thing, but in multiple domains. Manufacturers need process training and technology training, because you need to know, okay, you know what, I need to invest in monoperc or HJT or TOPCon, and probably go into even more details than that, which I'll not talk about right now. Subsequently, after manufacturing, you need a network of people across cities and towns, all of whom are comfortable knowing these technologies and what to actually select, but also comfortable converting this to business speak and converting this to very simple terms that customers can understand. So they do require some level of bridge training to explain the technology and distill it into a way that customers can understand, right? Which is mostly in terms of revenue or ROI or something of that sort. At the same time, and this has to happen in a decentralized fashion. So it's not good enough that it happens only in Ahmedabad. It has to happen in Mehsana, and it has to happen 30 kilometers from here also, in all directions, right? And by the way, Gujarat does a very good job in the solar space here, but I think that's why 85% of residential solar installs are in Gujarat, right? But outside of Gujarat, you don't see this happen a lot. This is also something which needs to happen in vernacular languages, not just in English or Hindi. Then subsequently, you need service training for all of these guys so that they can service, they can install, they can maintain these systems. And this is only for if solar. The moment batteries come into the picture, you need to know how to also maintain them, how to install them, how safety precautions which you have to take. Safety is, by the way, a very important thing, because I don't know how many of you have seen some of the solar installations on there, but you really have to be Spider-Man to actually access the systems after you've installed them, right? There's no way to clean those systems. and therefore their performance degrades in like a year's time, and that's it. I mean, the system is essentially a loss-making instrument after that. So you do need common sense training on how do you install safe systems, how do you maintain and clean these systems, how does a customer themselves going to do this, or at least have some helper do this in a safe fashion. So I think all of these pieces are something we have noticed, and we are slowly starting to plug in community training for these things also, right? So I think that's where, so it's basically looking at operations and seeing where in the life cycle of all of these facilities we can do that. And the last thing, and this is a small thing, is because we are a technical institution, a lot of it goes on new technologies. So for new entrepreneurs who want to invest in, say, hydrogen, we actually do trainings on demystifying, say, green hydrogen. Right? So what are membrane technologies, what is AEM, what is PEM, what is alkaline? People don't necessarily know this, and it's honestly the literature out there in the in social, I mean, not social media, but in the internet, can be very dense at times. So you just try and simplify this so that at least they have the basic terminologies and language correctly, so they can at least make an informed decision on whether to participate in this or not, right? This can be VCs, this can be micro entrepreneurs, or even existing, say, renewable energy companies who want to transition to green hydrogen. So there's a very vast array, and this, I think we are just starting to scratch the surface of what all we can do on the training segment. Yeah.
I think you made a fair few important points, and the one that connects with the next panelist, and I think I'll go to Rana here, is when you spoke about training communities for installing solar, and it's, you know, the Spider-Man analogy really clicked with the room as well. So it's not easy to constantly train people, and especially including on safety mechanisms. And I believe, Rana, you're doing the DARE at another level, where you want to take solar installations to the villages, and you want it to be a community project. You don't want it to be an individual project. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, and how are you reimagining solarizing villages?
Thanks, Kunjan. Thank you, Alka ma'am and Gayatri, for inviting NRDC in this important discussion, and it's an honor for me to be among such distinguished panelists. तो मैं हिंदी इंग्लिश मिला के बात करूँगा, क्योंकि हमारा काम ही ऐसा है, ग्रास रूट लेवल पे काम करते हैं, गांव वाले हम. तो thanks, Gunjan. It's very important to also know about, think about what's happening at the grassroots level. ठीक है, policies are being made at the national level. States are also playing their own important part in terms of policy design and implementation. But there's a whole lot of work that is also happening at the grassroots level, where organizations like NRDC, other organizations are actually supporting clean energy transition and adoption of those solutions at village and rural areas. Our work, our grassroots and community work is centered around an initiative known as Haryari Gram, if you are all aware about of that. It's a 7-8 years old initiative that we do in partnership with SEWA, Self-Employed Women's Association. And the objective of this initiative is to leverage SEWA's network of SEWA sisters to build their capacities so that they play a leading role in terms of adopting distributed RE. So these are smaller technologies around clean energy solutions, clean cooking solutions like biogas plants. There are some solutions around agriculture and irrigation centric solutions like solar precision irrigation, solar water pumps, solar fencing, trap lights. So these are smaller solutions, but are very important when it comes to, they are playing a very important role and impacting the lives and livelihoods of rural communities. Because for example, solar fencing and solar trap lights are helping reduce crop loss. They're helping, they are preventing attacks from animals. So it's impacting a lot. These are smaller technologies, but when it comes to when we collate all the impact and benefits, I think it's very important for the household to adopt these technologies. So one part of the work is the deployment of these technologies and build a community of leaders among the society, among the community who are essentially women. So it's a very women-centric, gender-focused initiative, and they play a transformational role at rural level to adopt these solutions. But challenging part ये है इसका कि उसको adopt कैसे करवाएं. So the couple of challenges around that is to build the capacities and motivation of these rural women, because they don't understand much. Not शहर के लोग ही नहीं जानते, तो गांव में तो क्लीन एनर्जी सोल्यूशन, सोलर क्या होता है, उसके बेनिफिट्स क्या हैं, जे मिशंस, they don't understand like that much. So a lot of time goes into building their confidence, building their capacities and understanding about these solutions. So that's one of the challenges, and the bulk of our time goes into building their capacities, which we have been doing successfully, leveraging Seva's network, because they have been there, they are present in 18 states. हरियाली ग्राम का सबसे ज़्यादा काम हमारा गुजरात में हुआ है, क्योंकि सेवा का सबसे ज़्यादा प्रेजेंस और सबसे पुराना प्रेजेंस गुजरात में ही है. Seva is working in Gujarat, so we are doing this in Gujarat, Rajasthan, MP, Gujarat, Rajasthan, UP, Maharashtra and Assam. So these are the 5 states. Another challenge is, one of the major challenges that we face is around climate financing, that we all know finance continues to be a very major challenge, barrier for overall India's clean energy transition, like leapfrogging from one level to another level. I think we need a lot of finance. Definitely it's a big challenge, and also most of the assets are not in the name of female member of the households. That also hinders accessing some of the subsidies and loans, क्योंकि मेल मेंबर के नाम पे होते हैं assets, lands, etc., घर का नाम, electricity bill, etc. So that's a very practical and very important, very practical barrier that we continue to face, is which actually prevents Seva sisters or women leaders to access these subsidies and financing opportunities. I have a small video of 2 minutes where I would like to show a Seva sister. It's testimonial of one of the leading Seva members who has adopted a few solutions, and she's actually talking about how these solutions and technologies have impacted her life and her household life. So I'll request to play that video. It's a 2-minute short video, but I hope that will give a better clarity and understanding about how these adoption is actually helping these individuals and ultimately at the community level as well.
મારું નામ સરોજબેન છે. મારો ભૂતકાળ બહુ જ કપરો હતો. હું સવારે મજૂરીએ જતી હતી અને સાંજે ઘરે આવીને ચૂલા પર ધુમાડામાં ઘરની રસોઈ બનાવતી હતી. પણ મનમાં તો એવું હતું જ કે સારું જીવન જોઈએ છે અને મારે જ લાવવું પડશે. એ તો મારા બચત મંડળનો આભાર કે મને પ્રોત્સાહન આપ્યું અને અમને એલપીજી વસાવવા મને ધિરાણ આપ્યું અને હું એલપીજી લઈ આવી. આજે મારા એકલા ઘરે ચોખ્ખું રસોડું નથી. મારા જેવી 1500 બહેનોને ચોખ્ખા રસોડાની તક આપી. મારી ધગસ વધી. મેં મારા ખેતરમાં સોલર પંપ નખાયો. એમાંથી મારા જેવા હજારો નાના ખેડૂત બહેનોને પાણી પહોંચાડ્યું. બીજા અમારી હું ના જોઈએ તો શું, પણ સૂરજ ને ધરતી તો અમારી સામે જોવાના જ છે. હું ત્યાંય ના રોકાય. મેં ઘરે ઘરે અજવાળા પહોંચાડ્યા. ફાગડી ગામમાં જ્યાં 100 વર્ષથી લાઇટ જ નહોતી, ત્યાં આજે રાતે પણ અજવાળા છે. જો સેવા અને સૂરજનો સહકાર ના હોત તો હું ખેતરે મજૂરી કરતી હોત અને મારા જેવી હજારો બહેનો અને ગામડાઓ અંધકારમય જીવન જીવતા હોત. સંગઠિત હતા, મંડળો હતા, તો આજે અજવાળા થયા. હજુ તો ભવિષ્ય અજવાળવાનું છે. નમસ્તે.
So yeah, I mean, this is an example of one of the impacts. I mean, a Seva sister. So ऐसे बहुत सारे कहानियाँ हैं बहुत सारे states में. Quickly coming to the skilling part, with the deployment, we have also designed some skilling programs in-house along with Seva. Seva has their a component of their skilling work which they do in Anand district. They have a climate school where we have jointly designed a program around climate entrepreneurship, where we are building capacities and understanding of these young Seva sisters on business skills, budgeting, financing, communication skills, management skills, along with some information about these solutions. So वो भी एक initiative हो रहा है. We do a lot of collaborative work with MNRE at the national level, with NSDC, with the Skill Council for Green Jobs. So skilling and capacity building initiative goes hand in hand along with the deployments, but that's a very important component of our work. But most of our focus still remains on the deployment part. तो हम पहले deploy कर रहे हैं, proof points ला रहे हैं, these success stories we bring out, and then these stories actually motivate other individuals to adopt. And then obviously skilling and capacity building is a very important component, which goes hand in hand.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. So since you mentioned inclusion and thank you for bringing the gender lens to this conversation as well, I'd like to turn to Yan and I'd like to. Okay, comic relief aside, I'm going to turn to you, Yan, and combine the two questions I have in mind for you. If you could build on what Rana's saying, but more from how our bilateral relationship between India and Australia is contributing to more inclusion in who we skill, and especially in our ability to scale inclusion in renewable energy. And if you could also touch a little bit more on how is the India-Australia relationship enabling entrepreneurship development.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kunjan ji and Alka ji. Suprabhat, Kemcho, Majama. My name's Jan Sinclair. I'm the Vice Consul for Australia in Western India. And it's my privilege to be on this panel and to speak to you all today. I'll just zoom out and give a little overview of the Australia-India relationship, which is driving what I'll speak about later. And that is that the Australia-India relationship is at an all-time high. The relations have never been stronger, and you see that between the close relationship between my Prime Minister and your Prime Minister, Modi ji. We have regular exchanges, and basically that has culminated in a few focus areas. One of those focus areas is the green economy. We have a renewable energy partnership that was signed by our Prime Ministers last year in 2024, so it's quite fresh, and we're looking for ways to operationalize that and to make an impact in India's burgeoning green economy. So I'll start off with the inclusion angle. Look, Australia has a similar experience in the sense that we have had a explosive mining boom in the last 25 years, and with that came the sense that there are not enough women working in these type of mining jobs. It was quite a male-dominated industry. Now, the green economy in India is largely male-dominated, and the question is, how do we get more women seeing the opportunity? And so we've seen one of the ways through this Seva project. The way we're trying to address that is quite directly. We have, under the Renewable Energy Partnership, announced a solar training academy in Gandhinagar, actually. It will be at the Pandit University, and we will be training 2,000 women in Gujarat to become solar technicians. So Australia has strong solar capabilities, and India and Gujarat in particular have massive solar resources. So that will be a way to directly make an impact for the women here and effectively contribute to the belief for women in this nascent industry that this is an industry for them. And just like in Australia, I think that should be followed up with scholarships, bursaries, interventions in high school, the same way that we did that with our mining cohort. In fact, my sister was someone that was going to become a medical doctor, and because someone pitched her the benefit of going and becoming a mining engineer, she changed her career and went for that. So that can be done in the green economy here too. But more broadly, discussing skilling and entrepreneurship, I'd say that India has a very young population and it will have massive skill demands, right? Australia is proud to support that because we have, we're actually in the top 3 in terms of countries that have the most universities, in the top 100 universities in the world. So we have high quality higher education, and we were proud to open up the first 2 foreign universities, branch campuses in India, in Gandhinagar as well, in Gift City. So we were the first country out of any country to be able to open up a new foreign university campus. Now, the way that entrepreneurship and skilling is developed is through higher education, through research partnerships, and then through bringing that to life in business. And we've seen that through some of the partnerships that we have with India. So for example, the University of Queensland has a research partnership with IIT Delhi. Swinburne University has a research partnership with IIT Hyderabad, and these are all in the green economy, whether it be critical minerals or sort of renewable energy technology development. With those 2 things, we've seen that that can contribute to high-level research partnerships. So we have the Australia-India Technology Challenge, and that is a partnership where we see new forms of green economy technologies being encouraged in development by the governments. And we also have a critical minerals research partnership. So our bodies of research hubs partner with yours, and we try and turn that into tangible projects. Now, is that working? That's the question. The answer is yes. I mean, yesterday it was pretty impressive to see Australian Premium Solar on stage signing one of the biggest MOUs in the inauguration ceremony. That was actually a company that was founded in Brisbane in Australia, and then by some an Indian team, and then was actually transferred to Gujarat, and now has become a major player in Gujarat's solar manufacturing field. So there's that one, but there's also Sunrise CSP. Now that's a large company that has operations in Australia, headquartered in Australia, but now it has operations in Vadodara in Gujarat, and that was actually developed out of a research project at the Australian National University. It was great to see that the managing director of GUVNL is actually an alumnus from the Australian National University as well, and now he's obviously in one of the highest ranking green economy jobs in the state. Now, Sunrise CSP has developed this big dish technology, and it's one of the most advanced solar concentration technologies in the world, and it's now become a make in India technology, even though it was started in Australia. So those are some tangible examples. And I've spoken about the Green Skilling Training Academy, the Solar Training Academy, our research partnerships, and I think that effectively covers it off as to how we're doing it in a bilateral sense.
Thanks for sharing, Annie. And so I think what I'd like to do next is to tie a lot of these individual angles that we played out on skills right now, from university to bilateral partnerships and inclusion, and how we're thinking of entrepreneurship and skilling in tier 2 and 3 cities, and come to you, Srinivas, for a comment on how can you help build out the macro skill development context from a net zero perspective. So tying these conversations and placing it right at the doorstep of our net zero commitments, and what does this, what does skill development there mean? And what, according to you, is the role of think tanks like yourself at Vasudha going to be in this context?
Thank you, Gunjan, and thank you, Alka, and thank you, Jetri, for having us here. Uh, if you actually step back and look at where we are in terms of net zero, we have pathways that have already been developed by Niti Aayog for India. We have various states that have already announced net zero targets, developed pathways or in advanced stages of developing pathways. But when you look at a lot of these pathways, and we have been part of the development of a lot of these pathways, they're largely more looking at it from a technology shift perspective, looking at it more from the cost perspective, looking at it more from an opportunity perspective. But there is very little thinking on the broader ecosystem. Okay, is there an ecosystem readiness, and what needs to be done for the ecosystem to be ready for this kind of a transition? Let me sort of give an example of that, and I'll give you 2-3 examples, but I'll start off with one example. Now, many of us have seen, have heard about the unprecedented rains that North India faced, the last couple of months. Now, in one of those rains, the deluge in Gurgaon in June, July, there were a lot of electric vehicles that were stranded on the roads, cutting across two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler, and also a lot of ICE, the internal combustion engine vehicles that were stuck on the roads. Now, while the internal combustion engine vehicles were towed the very next day or a few hours later, you had, including mine, you had a lot of electric vehicles that were on the road for more than 48 hours. The reason being that there were no trained technicians who could handle submerged electric vehicle, whether it's a two-wheeler or three-wheeler, because they were scared that the water would have got into the battery systems, right? There were very few, and so it took almost 48 hours in some cases, and in my case it took almost 72 hours for the car to get towed out to the nearest station. So now this sort of, one is your broader infrastructure readiness, which then raises a question on, okay, we are looking at targets. We have very ambitious targets. Every state, a lot of states have targets for sectoral targets, very ambitious. But then for us to achieve it, you also need the confidence from a wide range of stakeholders. An incident like that will sort of dampen the kind of confidence on, let's say, consumers on this whole transition. Till then, a lot of conversation or a lot of discussion was for EV scale-up and continues to be on charging infrastructure. Do we have enough charging infrastructures? But there was very little question on, do we have trained technicians? Is the ecosystem ready? And now all of a sudden, thanks to this incident, a lot of skill development agencies have come forward and said, okay, can we do something on this? So we know that we've been in touch with the Tamil Nadu Skill Development Corporation, and they want us to develop a curriculum for training street mechanics to repair two-wheelers and three-wheelers across the length and breadth of Tamil Nadu. Now, this is something that was not really talked of earlier, but now that's being talked. And I can sort of draw an analogy to, a survey that was done a while back about why Maruti cars are very popular in India. It's not just a fuel efficiency, but it is about the service. You can even take it to a Leh, Ladakh, and and then you'll find that there will be someone who can repair a Maruti car, right? I think that kind of a confidence is what is required, and that is what is the ecosystem I would think of. And of course, I'm only bringing in the technology or bringing in the skill aspect here, but the ecosystem readiness also cuts across the financial sector, the insurance sector, whole lot of players who actually did not come up at that time when this deluge happened to sort out problems, right? So now I think that's where we need to do a lot of focus. Now then there's a second part towards the whole issue of awareness, right? And again, a second example. We are also working in Surat, with the textile cluster to look at decarbonizing the whole cluster. And as you all know, Surat and Morbi, the ceramics cluster, consumes huge amount of coal. Now, when we talk of textiles, the general feeling or the general perception is electric boilers are the only solution. But actually, no. You can also do with heat pumps, right? Now, but then there's not awareness on that. And second, there are not very many manufacturers of heat pumps who can come up with heat pumps for that kind of steam temperature that is required for the textile processes. So this is where I think a role that organizations like Sunilji's organization can play a role in trying to create entrepreneurs for manufacturing heat pumps that can cut across various industrial applications. This again is an opportunity. So what I would see when I look at a broader ecosystem is I would say that yes, we have current set of technologies, but you also need to have new technologies. We also need to have more R&D. We need to have a lot more startups coming up and looking at promoting technologies that right now may be at a nascent stage, but have huge scope for scaling up. Heat pumps is just a small example. There are many, many such. And you were talking of circular economy. I think within that, there are a whole lot of opportunities that one can think of. So broadly, I would say that while pathways are important, and all of us are part of developing all these pathways, when you look at the implementation mechanism, I think you just need to look at, you need to look not just as a technological shift, but also look at shifts where you get a broader community buy-in and ensure that A, nobody is left behind in the transition journey. B, also ensure that there is a confidence of communities, people in the transition, right? So, I mean, when you don't have that, because at the end of the day, for transition to happen, all of us need to also change. And for all of us to change, we need to have that confidence. So that's where the broader ecosystem readiness is very important.
Some very important points there, Srinivas, and thanks for connecting it with Sunilji's work as well. So I think it's always a good panel when we're able to already see.
But I forgot to say where think tanks play a role.
Yes.
Okay, now where do think tanks play a role, right? Now, and I think this is the point that you asked Abhishek. You know, the connect between academia, policy makers, community, and so on. Now, all said and done, you have the academia, you have you know, the think tank. I mean, you have the policy makers, you have the communities. They don't, and then you have the industries. I don't think they necessarily talk to each other, right? There is always a disconnect, right? And how do you bring in the community to the industries to the community to the policy makers to the community? It's not that they don't want to talk to each other. It's just that they don't have the bandwidth to talk to each other. I think that's where think tanks like us, whether it's CW, Vasudha, NRDC, you know, all of us play a role, is how do we bridge, how do we act as a bridge between these various stakeholders, bring the community voice, what is required on the ground, right? What are the kind of policy shifts that would require, that would have a community connect? What are the kind of technologies that would be required? And that's where you have institutes like Atria and others who can sort of develop that, right? Yes, you can think big. You can look at A membrane and B membrane, but do those membrane connect with the communities? Is that something that they can work with? I think that's the role that we think tanks could play and are playing.
We are at 11:30, so Alka, you're expecting the conversation to be until 11:30, or can we field a few questions? Continue. Okay. And I think your permission to continue is just as important, because we don't want folks to be dozing off an hour of. Sure. Okay. But why don't we break the format a little bit, because we have been talking in the panel for about 60 minutes. Why not try and take some questions from the audience for about 10 minutes and then have some final few questions for the panelists. Does anyone have a question you would like to ask? Let's make this a conversation rather than a one-way street. Any questions?
Hello. Sir, what are the major issues to secure the fundings for the green economy?
So I'll take a couple, and and field it to different panelists.
So I think, excellent conversations, and thank you everyone for bringing different, perspectives. While we did talk about a lot about skilling, especially like when the governments, this bilateral collaborations, and what you are doing at your Center for Excellence, I just felt, maybe I'm wrong, that it is all about skilling young people. I wanted to ask, is there some provisions that you all have come across about reskilling of all the employees that are already in the fossil fuel industry? For example, people who are working in the thermal power sectors, or like what Srini sir said about, the mechanics and all who are working in the IC industry. Is there anything that you would like to quote for the reskilling programs for the middle-aged group people, or people who are not close to retirement, but because of green economy shift will have to find new livelihoods?
Yeah, great question. Any other question? We can take 3 and then, yes.
So I just came, but I'm working in battery sector, electrochemical energy storage solutions. What are the scenario? What is the real scenario in India on the skilling manpower who can make from raw material to battery cell? Anyone, if you can make some insight on this issue. Thank you.
3 very crisp questions, which makes my life easy, because generally moderators have to say, okay, got your question. So thank you for keeping it short and crisp. For your question on funding for entrepreneurs, Dr. Shukla, if you would like to take that question.
Thank you. I think it's a very good question. Funding certainly is an issue, and particularly for green businesses, which are perceived to be capital intensive. And not only it is the business opportunity, but the investment and lack of awareness about the technology is also an issue, which poses challenge for attracting funding support. Of course, if I look at the schemes, there are schemes for reskilling as well. Some of the initiatives by Government of India, routed through the state governments like PM Daksh Yojana, which is for the reskilling. That was the question for middle-aged people. That also addresses. So reskilling can be done, which helps in making a viable, feasible, bankable business plans, which have better acceptability by the funding institutions. As I mentioned initially, that there is a scheme in MSc Spices scheme. That also is there for a scheme of investment and promotion in circular economy. So funding mechanism is there under RAMP scheme of the MSME Ministry, Government of India. And also there are other couple of initiatives by different state governments. We are working in the state of Uttarakhand, we are working in Northeastern. So the specific schemes which enables people in attracting funding, like handloom, handicraft. So these are sector specific schemes which are available. Even in Gujarat, there is a flagship scheme of the Kutir Udyog department, that is Hastakala Setu Yojana, and which has been able to bring about 33,000 plus artisans on a common platform by providing them artisan cards and making available schemes like Vajpayee Bankable Yojana, wherein they can come into the mainstream of the funding support. And government has been supporting for their capacity building, enabling them for attracting the financial support. So these are several schemes. Apart from all those that we are aware, whether it is CGT MSc, which is a capital incentive, bigger enterprises, which aim at. Having said so, I would say that while attracting funding in tier 2 cities is still little more easy, if not very, very easy, compared to tier 3. Tier 3 it is very, very difficult because lack of awareness about the green businesses itself poses a challenge, and the cost of inventory, cost in supply chain management makes it more capital intensive, the business opportunities. So that also we need to have. But There are schemes for skilling, reskilling, and funding mechanisms are there. Lots of angel investors, venture capitalists, they have been showing their preferences for funding such businesses. Yes.
And if I could, yeah, offer, I'll come to you, Srinivas. If I could just offer a little bit, and it does, I wouldn't pressure you to reply to it, but anybody on the panel as well, is if we could offer a little bit of a critical lens to the schemes that we've discussed on the panel today, both Devdeep as well, is that there is a gap between how the schemes are designed and its implementation, right? Especially, say, for several of the skill development programs, we see that either the enrollment is not as high, or those who enroll don't end up staying the whole course. If they do end up staying the whole course, they may not find employment. If you find employment, you don't stick to the job. So it's a multi-layered problem. So can we offer a little bit of a solution-oriented lens to this design and implementation gap?
Thanks, Gunjan. I think that's a very relevant point. And when it comes to skilling, the major issue is, see, when you talk about green business, the business part, I think Dr. Shukla has rightly mentioned, but on the skilling part, the supply side part, that how are we preparing the youth, there is a major issue in whether these trainings, they are getting converted into employment. That's a crucial challenge. And we have seen in different government-run schemes also, because skilling becomes a mandate, but employment may not become a mandate. And that is where that NSDC has actually launched a couple of years back a skill impact bond, which actually has taken which has actually mobilized private capital into skilling. And typically how it happens is that there are risk investors who actually does the initial amount of investment, provides the working capital for training. And there is a mandate of training. For example, in the version 1 of Skill Impact Bond, the mandate is of training 50,000 youth over a period of 3-4 years. And then the mandate is tied with this, that it has to be outcome oriented. So it has to achieve, say, for example, 70% placement. And with this 70% placement, there is also a method to track that there is a retention. There is a retention of displacement, because many times we have seen, at an implementation level, we have seen that offer letters are rolled out by the companies, but either there is some issue with those offer letters, or the candidates, they don't join those companies. So there was no method actually to track that. So this skill impact bond actually takes care of that, because we track that retention. And so what happens is, essentially, philanthropic risk investors, so for example, in version 1, NSDC and MSDF, Michael Susan Dell Foundation, they have put in together a fund of around 30 crore. And then, the mandate is to train 50,000 youth, of which 60% has to be women. And then there's a lot of focus on the marginalized sections also. And then the outcome it has to achieve is 70% placement, around 75% placement has to be achieved, and there is a minimum retention of 3 months. So when you track this entire ecosystem, then you get to understand that, yes, how the cycle works. And since it's an outcome-based funding, so then the outcome is then the outcome funders, they fund it only if these targets are achieved. So the model works this way. So and that is a very important way that you have to mobilize private investment into this entire ecosystem. Because see, government schemes is just to push, just to kickstart the system. But ultimately, if you have to really keep the things going, the private funds, they have to come in. And if we really need to channelize the private funds, we need to ensure the employment and the retention. We cannot, deny that. So that, I think, is the most important. And just one point adding to her question, when she was talking about the reskilling part or the upskilling part for the middle-aged professionals. So there are, provisions which we called micro-credentials. So they are kind of very short-term courses which are designed for professionals, and the courses, they range from 20-25 hours to 100 hours kind of thing. Depends on your experience and what is the level. And once you're trained in those courses, you get those certificates, and there are different, we call it, National Skills Qualification Framework, and that's a part of the National Credit Framework, and you get the, recognition according to that. So there are provisions that, because when as you have rightly said, that when it comes to green skills, it may not always be an upskilling, because there can be transversals which can be achieved, because there can be horizontals which may be required. So there may be a 30-hour course requirement or a 40-hour requirement which can help you to move. So those provisions are already there, and those are part of the National Credit Framework also.
In addition to the schemes that Sunilji listed out, there are a number of states that have exclusive schemes to address unemployed youth. And these schemes offer what you call a full cycle approach, where they actually look at from the training, identification of these youth, the training programs, identifying what kind of training programs would suit them, and then linking up with industries and then placing them. And one scheme that I can think of immediately that comes to my mind is a scheme called Nan Mudalaman, which is a scheme of the Tamil Nadu government, which aims at creating employment opportunities for something like 20 lakh unemployed youth or 30 lakh unemployed youth in the span of the next 3 to 6 months. Of course, elections are around the corner, so they're looking at those numbers. But anyway, you didn't hear that from me. But yes, so you're looking at those kind of huge numbers. But you have these schemes, and they are all linked to that. And that also addresses your question, sir, that you asked about, do we have enough, can we look at specialized training for manufacturing of batteries? So again, these are, and you have designated agencies as part of that scheme, which is the nodal agency is the Tamil Nadu Skill Development Corporation, but also is the Tamil Nadu Green Energy Corporation. So both of them work hand in hand in developing these schemes. So I just wanted to say that, and it's not Tamil Nadu is one example I can think of, but there are many states that have similar schemes.
Okay. Any more questions? Because we have about 15 minutes, and then I'll move to the twist.
Hello.
2 questions. Okay.
Sir, what are the social challenges to make a transitions from traditional sources to green economy and sustainable sources? And how can it be overcome from traditional sources?
Very close to your question, I would imagine, on moving from a current grey sector to a green sector. Okay, and there was one more question from the store. Yes.
Yes. So my question is, I don't know pertain to which panelist, but is in general context. See, if we talk about the green energy ecosystem for entrepreneurship, right? There are training institute, there are many institutes which support financially, right? But these all things are come after there is idea of entrepreneurship. What I mean is that when I brought up, my parents used to told me, do your good study, you will get good job. Whatever input I have received from my social institution, that exactly works, right? When I took admission in university, my university told me, do your best, we will provide you better placement. And they did. Whatever input I have received, exactly I have given output. So, do we have any system that works to generate entrepreneur?
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's for you, Abhishek, in terms of how can we think of, say, a center for training entrepreneurs within the university system, instead of just, like you said, you don't do classic mechanical engineering, electrical engineering anymore, and it's a lot of innovation for entrepreneurship in a way. So if you could elaborate on that, and that's one. And on your question in terms of grey to green transitions, who would want to take that question? Rana. Sure.
Before that, I want to address the question
on reskilling as well. Okay.
So before all of this, I just want to address something on reskilling. There is a massive value to reskilling in even experienced people in specific sectors. I'll give you an example which typically will not come up organically here. but let's take the example of offshore wind plants, right? Some of the best people who can work in offshore wind plants would be ex-petrochemical people, right? Because they know how to do a survey, geological survey, they know how to work in deep water, they can live on boats for months on end also and get this, because the people who have worked in oil rigs, offshore oil rigs, are typically the best people here. Now, of course, is there a path? See, the offshore wind market in India is not very big, but it's just getting started. Another example I can give you is from a completely different space, which is who is the best dealer for a battery storage system is probably who has been a dealer for a DG set in the past. So somebody who sold Cummins and Kirloskar systems understands the need of the customer, which is how much power cuts are happening, when they are happening, what is the requirement for them, are they running a process industry which requires them to have an online UPS or something of that sort. So typically those are people who are running businesses and who are servicing these systems for a while, and they're not usually young, right? They're in their 40s and 50s. And if they can reskill it, they have the opportunity to not lose their business, to actually transition their business to this green economy. So again, these are things which require some level of working in the sector to understand what is there. And over time, you will start to see these training pathways also emerge. So that's one thing. From an entrepreneurship in the university ecosystem space, I'll take that question up. I think there, honestly, there are two things. One is that today, thanks to the government, you have tons of incubation schemes set up, which were not there 10 years back, right? I mean, we didn't know what an incubator was at that time. Today, you have incubation schemes set up, you have startup funds, you have state funds, but ultimately, entrepreneurship just comes from that innate desire to look at the world around you and see what problems are there and address them, right? So I think that what has helped is that you have seen successful examples of people taking that risk and succeeding to some extent, so that motivation to become an entrepreneur has reduced. At the same time, at least in the university ecosystem, what I've seen is that being hands-on and just doing tinkering, and this is where things like the Atal Tinkering Labs also help. Tinkering around and just making systems, even if they break, even if they fail, that's not a problem, but just keeping on making these things really help you to understand that you can do something even sitting in the university after hours, after classroom hours, and actually making something out of it, right? Once you start seeing even the tiniest amount of value being delivered by those small systems, you start to dream big. So I think fundamentally, I don't think somebody can do a class in entrepreneurship and tell you, oh, now you have everything to become an entrepreneur. It starts with that internal desire saying, I want to create value, and I think I'm the best person to do this. And then someone like, you can have an entrepreneurship class to tell you, okay, these are the frameworks that you use, or these are the techniques that you use to de-risk your system. This is a product management portfolio, and so on. So I think that's where the thing is. It ultimately has to come from you, and just go around, see the world around you, and see what problems exist. And then I think classes exist to teach you what to do, what not to do, once you're traversing this path of entrepreneurship.
Yes, I think very, very quickly addressing the challenge of moving from grey to green is, one challenge is the mindset issue. There's always a hesitation among us. जब भी कुछ नया आता है, there is always a hesitation to adopt that new thing, right? So there's a fundamental issue with green transition in general across sectors, across levels, urban, rural, is the mindset issue. How many of us own an EV vehicle? बाहर पार्किंग में आप जाके काउंट करिए कितने e-vehicles हैं, e-vehicle, four-wheelers हैं. So this is a problem across levels, government, community, organizations, individuals, household level. I think charity begins at home. So mindset issue is major challenge which actually is hindering us to move from grey to green. Second is the finance part, which is a practical issue. Most of these products, technologies, equipments, solutions are still very costly. So finance is definitely a challenge. अगर हम चाहें भी तो बहुत time हम wait करते हैं for the cost to come down, go low. So I think that these are the two fundamental barriers or issues that is actually maybe slowing down the pace at which we need to transition to green products or green economy. Otherwise, I think if we sort these two issues, the mindset issue a longer term thing, because it will take a lot of hand holding, awareness generation, like the parents teaching their own kids, and financing part definitely needs to go hand in hand.
Right. And I just thing in a very concrete manner, something that we do realize this problem, that yes, sectors will transition, and what do you do with a lot of the skill that would otherwise go wasted? Every worker that goes back home is a loss to our skill pool. And so what we are trying to develop is an app, really. Let's make it as interactive as possible. Let's take it away from specific policy books. So we're developing an app we're using the qualification packs that we have with the government of India, and we fed in all the occupations that we have in India. The app can help you say, click on the occupation you currently have, and based on your skills say, can you tell me the next best 5 alternative jobs that I can do? And that app, we would love to see it being used across states, across even at decentralized levels of planning, because that makes it very tangible. For example, if I am an ICE worker, so I work with internal combustion engine, that's your petrol, diesel cars, and with electric vehicles, I'm seeing that, well, I don't have a lot of job growth prospects. This app can help you figure that you can become a technician in the air conditioning industry, because you're using the similar skills of thermal, heating and cooling, the same engineering knowledge, and air conditioning is a fast growing sector, right? So we're trying to build a system where the skills that people have built, whether formally, informally, through training on the job or government schemes, doesn't matter, but that skill should continue to be playing a role in India's advancement rather than just letting it become a dead pool of skills. So yeah, Srinivas, you also wanted to say something.
It was just a bridge between what you said, the app that you're creating, and what Abhishek said. And I want to take the analogy of the offshore wind. It will be useful to identify for each of these new engagements, what are the kind of skill sets required and who could contribute to it. Sometimes, there could be a community that you least expect who could contribute to this. The fishing community, for instance. Do we involve them in an offshore wind project? Absolutely not. But can we involve them? There is a possibility that you could involve them. They would understand the currents. They would know when you lay a submarine cable. They would understand the entire ocean system, which a lot of people otherwise want. You talk to petroleum engineers, but I would say a fisher community would have a lot more knowledge on that. But then, by default, they are not, we don't consider them trained enough to be engaged in an offshore wind project, but how can we change that? Because anyway, they are unemployed for 2 or 3 months or 4 months a year. So can we use that period? You use the right word. Why do we waste away skills? Can we use that skills for something else? So I think you need to look at a little bit of out of the box thinking.
Just one point adding to that, and this is something which is, because India is heavily dependent on coal. So for example, this green transition, when we are saying, for the coal dependent communities, it becomes even far more, I would say, worse, because coal dependent communities, they are in that particular region generations after generation. Now when we say that India has close to around 300 mines, now if we say that that we are going to close down these, or for green transition we have to shift to different other sectors, what will happen to those communities? And that is where I think it is very important that we find, as you have rightly said, that that we find that what are the relatively close occupations, what are those occupations where I can actually try to switch in. So if we can build that over a period of time, and it will take some time, it is not that it will happen immediately, but if we can build that, that will actually, the green transition will happen over a period of time, and that will lead to success, some success. That's what.
So we are almost ending on a very positive note. It's always a bit tricky with panels, especially when we're talking about India's skill development. Is going to end on a positive note or or somewhere in between. So, do you want to say something?
It was a very good question by a young man. that in the college we were taught about being employable, and is there any way that we can ensure that you can become entrepreneur? That's a very valid question. But everybody need not be entrepreneur also. There are other valuable, very, very important professions. I mean, we have been teaching entrepreneurship for last over 40 years. We have MBA in entrepreneurship, we have PhD equivalent FPM program in entrepreneurship. But entrepreneurship is altogether a different discipline. It has to be taught differently. There are different methodologies, and I know with government's efforts, there are various EDCs, entrepreneurship development cells, or innovation and entrepreneurship development cells, apart from incubation centers, which Abhishek ji and Srinivas ji mentioned. These are all various institutions, various departments which focus on different methodology and try to develop entrepreneurs. In our institute also, we have doctoral course, MBA. In a regular institution, if you go and do a course on BE, next day after graduation, you can start writing an engineer. You do an MBBS from a medical college, and you can start writing doctor. Unfortunately, even after conducting a PhD in entrepreneurship, you are not an automatic entrepreneur unless you prove yourself. And that's what the mindset issue is important. So I would say that rather than thinking of becoming an entrepreneur, try to be entrepreneurial. Whatever you do, try to be different. Why to add values? And of course, when we are, the context is green business, then the way we are taking care of the society, we also need to take care of the environment, the climate. Otherwise, it will not sustain. And this is the responsibility of all of us, whether entrepreneurial or not entrepreneurial. Thank you very much.
Okay, so for the last 2 minutes, any question that we would like to ask each other? Yeah, Jan.
So I'm not a subject matter expert on skilling, entrepreneurship, or the green economy, but these gentlemen are, and for that reason, I'd like to ask any one of you, what would you like to see from foreign countries? We know that this future that we're talking about will require international partners, whether that be in other countries' critical minerals, hopefully Australia's, whether it be in other countries' investment or education. So you're all in the field. What would you like to see an international partner doing in your country or in Gujarat itself to make this a reality?
Bringing partnership in knowledge creation, knowledge preservation, knowledge generation, good quality research, sharing the wealth of knowledge. This is what we expect, because Australia has very good institutions for entrepreneurship as well, and there are good institutions in India as well, excelling in different fields. Sectoral institutions are there. So if you can help getting that partnership established and creating a platform where they can learn from each other's best practices, I think that would be a remarkable contribution. As an institution, at least, I can say that.
So I mean, I'll give a very, again, a different example from this space. So Australia has had, on the energy side, Australia has had digitalization seep in at a much earlier level than India. So a discom or a utility in Australia has been typically a lot more digitalized than an equivalent discom in India, right? So that is useful skills which can be transferred here on how that transition should be made. Because the moment you have 30%, 40% renewables coming in, digitalization, without digitalization, the system will just collapse, right? So I think that, for example, is things which you would typically not find in a traditional skilling system. And those are also not skills which are easily available in an Indian context. So you typically can try and see how knowledge can be transferred from outside, and what mistakes they made in that transition, what successes they had, and so that you don't repeat those mistakes, you leapfrog them, right? So I think there are similar things in other sectors also, but this is one place where I personally work, so I thought it's significant. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other question? No? Okay. So we were just kind of entrepreneurial amongst ourselves in this panel as well. So I'd like to close, if there are no more questions from the audience as well, exactly on time, since we did start on time as well. Thank you for being such a patient audience. It's not easy to be sitting for 90 minutes. And I did not sense too many distractions either, so that's really amazing. I'd just like to close maybe with a quick summary. We discussed a lot of good points today. We started with discussing that tier 2 and 3 cities are particularly tricky. Our realities are very different from tier 1. Even if we are thinking of similar green solutions, the way we think of those solutions, the finance we have, the skills we have, our capacity, knowledge, etc., requires a whole different approach. Universities are like Atria. I think there's some lead to be taken from how you are not thinking of KPIs anymore. Universities, both globally and in India, are obsessed with how many papers did you write, evaluating professor performances in terms of the books you write and the papers you write. But you're changing that and you're saying, no, let's talk about the impact you created. So that in itself would be very good, because then by default you're going to start thinking of what are the partnerships we can build, how do we speak to industry a little more. We also spoke about the importance of bilateral relationships and how there's a strong bond now at an all-time high between India and Australia, and how more of that work and cross-fertilization of ideas through research and entrepreneurship development can go a long way. And of course, the importance of inclusion and community engagement. And I'd like to emphasize that we did not discuss inclusion and community engagement tokenistically, but actually being fundamental to scale and solve for the problem at hand. The panelists stressed that if we are not acknowledging and thinking constructively of the knowledge that exists within the community, we are designing a poorer problem, and a problem that may not have a long shelf life. And we also discussed that we are not looking at women as a tick box in our long form to say X number of women trained, but we're actually seeing women as instrumental to change. We are recognizing that they are early adopters. We recognize that they know finance, even if they may not be educated in finance. They do finance. They are excellent managers of finance and decision making. So thank you for putting forward such solid points, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, dear panelists, and of course, the amazing moderator, Ms. Gunjan. It has been very engaging. We didn't even get to know that 90 minutes are over until Gunjan nudged me asking, should we continue? And seeing the watch, what, time is over so soon? Yeah, so it was really very interesting. Many times people think it's skilling, entrepreneurship, sort of a dry subject, and what new can we talk about it? We've been studying, schooling, going to college, and everything, speaking the same things. But no, it was so interesting hearing from all of you. And I am typically proud of myself of the amazing panel I created. And I was building it up. I got help from Gunjan also. And after all the work which was done, and finally when I was seeing, and I was, okay, yeah, I've nearly managed to get from different sectors. But generally it happens that you have 2 or 3 people from the same sort of a work profile, and it becomes sort of a repetition. But I don't know, all my stars were on my side, I think, and I could pull off such a wonderful panel. And thankful to all of you. I know you're all very busy with your work. Mehsana was not a very easy place to commute to also, because I know it's Ahmedabad is a better place. There is direct flight connectivity. There is a little travel that you have to do by road, and I was keeping my fingers crossed that no, that should not be any hurdle. So it's so thankful, indebted to you all that you all agreed, came, and you've shared your views. And I look forward for many more interactions. This was just one stepping stone, and we need to take this up as Gayatri as an institution, Gujarat as a state. We need to, and India as a country, as Mr. Yan is willing to do. We talked about bilateral relations also, and since Australia-India relations are at the peak, we should make the best of it. Yeah, thank you all of you panelists. So wonderful to have you here. It's an honor. Gunjan, thank you so much for all that extra effort which you did. So I'd like to now, a small memento from our side as a gratitude for your coming down here, gracing this occasion. I hope it's been a wonderful visit for you all who all have come here for the first time to Gujarat, or even to Mehsana. I'm sure it may have been the first time for most of us. So thank you once again. Now again, can I call my co-workers, my co-colleagues? Can they come and do the honors, please? This way we'll start with Mr. We go from junior to senior, or how do we do it? The same people? Or do we call someone from the audience? Yeah, that would be better. Rini, could you please? Yeah. Yeah, Sunil, sir. Florence, please, could you come on stage? Oh, Mr. Srinivas. Yeah, Dr. Jyoti, please, could you come on stage? Mr. Yan, please. Could I have on stage the young gentleman who asked a few questions from the back? Please, please come. Mr. Devdeep Dey. Yes, please. We'll give you a bag, don't worry, Mr. Abhishek. Yeah, Dr. Jyoti. Can we have your colleague? Yeah, please come on stage. Mr. Rana. And Rini, your colleague, what's her name? I forgot, I'm so sorry. Please. To Gunjan, and let's hear it all for the amazing moderator. Thank you so much. Get the bags, please. A group photo, yeah, okay. Here? I don't know, the photographer has to direct. खड़ा नहीं है. Gunjan should actually be there. Careful, careful.